Hi weaving friends, and welcome to a brand new video. This one's a little bit different given the strange times that we are currently going through throughout the world, and I don't need to go into any details there, but I know that many of us are in isolation or quarantine. Hopefully none of you watching this are actually sick, but if you are, I wish you well and I hope you get better really soon. But I did think that it would be an excellent time for a sort of longer project, one that is relaxing, doesn't require too much thought, but is nonetheless beautiful. So I've decided on a tapestry, and I was looking around for some inspiration, and I decided to use Van Gogh's Starry Starry Night as a colour inspiration. My idea is not to copy the painting or to try to produce a replica of the painting, but just to use the colour and the mood of the painting and see where that takes me with my tapestry. So this video is not all that planned out, which is what I wanted, and most of it is actually in real time, which means it's probably going to be quite long and split into a few videos. I hope that's something that you're up for at the moment, but I figured that people have a bit of extra time up their sleeves at the moment and might want to watch something a little bit lengthy and in a step-by-step process, sort of looking over my shoulder as I work kind of thing. I hope you really enjoy it, and I hope it brings you a little bit of peace in these troubled times. Also, it could be a really good time for you to delve into your weaving in general, and a great way to do that is through my online weaving school, where you can buy single classes or memberships. Weavers of all levels are very welcome to join. And I do have some free classes over there as well if you want to take a look at those. Also, don't forget, if you are new here, to subscribe and click the notification bell so that you get notified every time I have new videos. And please like and share this video if you like it. Alright, enough of my chit chat, let's get on with the project. I began by having a look at my stash, and I do have quite an extensive stash. And I had a picture of the painting with me, and I just wanted to get a basic idea of the colours and tones that were in the painting. So there are a lot of blues, obviously, and blues of all different shades. Some are light, some are dark, some are in between, and even some sort of blacks, a few greys, and of course the yellows in there. I'm thinking that I'm going to probably use the yellows sort of sparingly and as spots, and I definitely want to get that crescent moon in there and that sort of thing. I notice also he has some sort of whites or almost cream colours. I'm not really sure if I'm going to put whites or cream colours in my tapestry. I'm thinking that perhaps I will just go with some of the paler yellows, but because of this style of tapestry, we'll just see how we go as we go along, and I can make decisions on the way. As I've said, it's not going to be a replica. I'm just using the actual painting for inspiration. There are some very dark colours in here as well, some black, so I've got some black there, and probably once again I'd be using that sparingly. I also found in my stash this awesome hand spun, which just happens to have blues and blacks, all different blues and blacks in it, which is perfect for this. I've got a real range here. I've got wool, I've got this eyelash yarn, don't know if that'll be incorporated or not, we'll see. I've got hand-dyed cotton, I've got bamboo, more hand spun here, all different types of wool, some acrylic, that's the really bright one, and some silk over here. So, and they're all different weights as well. So some of them are fingering weight, some of them are a light worsted, and I think I've got one here that is like an iron weight. So it's going to be an interesting piece. First thing we need to do is to separate the warp. That spaces the warp for us and gives us a sort of basis to start off with. So I'm going to go into the up shade. I'm also going to tighten my tension a little. And I'm going to pop in one of my cardboard separators. Then into the down shed and another separator. I'm just going to beat those and then I'm pretty much ready to start. I'm going to advance my warp a little to give me a little bit more weaving space here. And then we're about ready to start. So I am going to start in the up shed, and I'm going to start with a black. Now I'm not heavily planning this project. In fact, I'm barely planning it at all. So normally when I do a tapestry, I will actually do a design on paper, and then I'll draw that design onto the warp threads with a Sharpie. And I'm not doing that this time, and I'm doing that on purpose because I want this to be a free flowing, non-calculated sort of project. That's very much the purpose of doing this. And so I'm going to just see what happens as I go along. And I don't know what I'm going to get, and I'm okay with that. So I'm going to beat that and then go into the down shed. I'm going to tuck that tail in and get rid of it. And really I'm just going to do a few picks of plain weave. So at the moment the black that I'm using is a wool that is a fingering weight. Once again, I'm not planning my yarns. I'm going to put a whole lot of yarns in there together and see how they come out. And that's part of the fun of this, is not knowing. I'll be doing a few things differently to my last freestyle tapestry videos. If you haven't checked those out, you probably want to, because it'll help you to understand what I'm intending to do here. But it is a few years since I did those videos, and I'll be doing things a little bit differently this time. All right, so I've got, what have I got? About 5 rows of plain weave there. I want to start out with a bit of darker yarn towards the bottom, working up towards a little bit lighter for the sky, and then incorporating those elements like the yellow and the circles and the crescent moon. I did say that I'm not copying the painting at all. I'm using it for inspiration. But I do want to incorporate the elements that I really like the crescent moon and the radiating yellow circles, which look pretty cool. And so I want to try and have similar things in my weaving. Okay, so, and he has at the bottom of the painting, there's an entire village with some mountains in the background. There's a big, I guess it's a tree at the left, and I actually don't like that element of the painting, so I'm not going to be using anything like that. I'm not going to have some big tree thing coming up here because I'm not that fond of that. And I'm also not going to be weaving in specifically a village, because that's sort of fine work and would take a lot of pre-planning with colours and having to draw the little houses on, and you know, lots of little finicky things. And that's not what this tapestry is about. It's a freestyle, free-flowing, whatever kind of thing, but using the painting very much for inspiration. So one thing that I really like about this painting is the movement and the colours, the combination of colours and the way that they move and swirl together. So I don't want to have too many straight edges in this tapestry. So I'm going to start by taking my fork and pushing this so that I can initiate those curves. I'm going to start just in this corner. I've just got my heddle in neutral at the moment, and I'm going to push that. You see that the black comes together a lot more, and that's something, of course, that we're going to be doing in this tapestry. A tapestry is a weft-faced weave, which means that you don't want to see the warp, you want to see just the weft. So we are going to be pushing it with a fork or beating it with whatever you have. And I want to take this curve up quite a bit. And you'll see if you're using your stash yarns, as I am, you know, a bit of a mixed bag, that some of the yarns will cover the warp really well and others will struggle to cover the warp. And that's kind of all part of it too. And at the end of the day, you know, does it really matter if some of your warp threads are showing? In a tapestry like this, with a painting like this that has so many little dibs and dobs of colour and you know, lines and pieces everywhere, do we have to be so worried that all the tapestry, all of the warp is covered? So I'm really just making this up as I go along. Pushing a little bit here, pushing a little bit there. Don't forget to hop over to my blog. I'll have a link down below, and that'll have all of the information for you, like the warp yarn that I've used, the length of the warp, the reed, all of that information that you would want to be able to do something similar. All right, I think I'm happy with those curves. I've got two options with what to do underneath the curve, because now what I have is underneath the curve I've got open warp space, right? So I can do one of two things. I could knot this off when it's finished and leave it as a curved edge. Or if I wanted to finish off with a straight edge, I can use a tapestry needle, bring this same yarn in and fill in all of this underneath if I wanted to. To be honest, I've not decided yet what I want to do, but because it's needle weaving anyway, I can decide on that later. I don't have to decide on that right now. I can see how it goes as I build it up, and if I feel like I would like to fill in that space, I can, as long as I haven't advanced my warp too far forward. So I'll keep it in the back of my mind. But I'm not too worried about it at this point because I want to see how things pan out first. Okay, I like those curves. It's going fine. So from this point on, I'm not going to be using my heddle as a beater. I'm just going to be using it to change my two sheds. So I'm ready for my next shed, which is up. I'm going to keep going with the black a little bit. Now, to help prevent the draw in of your warp threads at the sides, because you don't want a tapestry that goes thick and skinny and thick and skinny, you can bubble the weft. So I'm going to pop back into neutral from the up shed, because remember I'm just using this heddle now to make the sheds. And I can, grabbing my pointer finger and my thumb, I can just push down through those warp threads to make it bubbled. This creates more space for the weft as it goes through, and then I can beat that down. Then I can go into the down shed. Go back into neutral, bubble it, and beat. I like to use a nice heavy fork too. It's nice and weighty, so it makes the beating a little bit easier. As you beat, you may find that some of your curves start to come out because, of course, as you're beating, you're pushing the weft down a little, which can impact on the bottom weft. So after you've beat a couple of times, you can always clean those curves up from underneath. Just give them another push, put them back into the position that you wanted them to be in. Now we were up shed, weren't we? So you can either follow roughly what I'm doing, depending on what sort of yarns you have in your stash, or you can just watch this and use it as inspiration. You may want to get a painting of your own, like you might have a favorite with really nice colors, nice movement, whatever it is that you like about the painting, and use that as your inspiration. That was down shed, wasn't it? No, up. Okay, so we're in down shed now. Check that. Yep. Actually, what I wanted to do to begin with when I was thinking about doing this project was I wanted to use a Monet painting because I love Monet. I love his colours. I love the tranquility of his paintings. And I think looking at tranquil paintings is a good activity to be doing right now. But I looked through a lot of his paintings and I thought for what I'm doing, for doing this video, I think I need something with a bit more contrast. And then of course I thought of Starry Starry Night, which I also like very much. And I thought that's the perfect painting because it has so much contrast and movement. And so that's why I decided on that. Also, a lot of Monet paintings have very small features, like very small flowers and things. And I just wasn't sure how I would incorporate them. I thought about, well, I could embroider on it afterwards. That would be probably easier than trying to weave them in. And I may still do that after I finish this one. Perhaps I will. We'll see. But certainly contrasting colours are good. And if you look at my first... Oh, I'm meant to be in the down shed there. If you look at my first freestyle tapestry videos, you'll see that I have used very contrasting colours. And that's one thing that makes it so striking. Another thing that I'll mention is I am fixing the edges, so I'm pinching the edges like I normally would. If you're not sure what I'm talking about there, have a look at my neat edges video. But I'm fixing the edges and then I'm bubbling the weft because you still want to have neat edges. A tapestry is often something that you want to have on display, so you're not going to be hiding the edges as such. And the neater they look, the better, I guess. So I'm just fixing up those curves from underneath again. I've got a slightly loose warp thread here, that one there, giving me a little bit of trouble. So I will probably grab a weight for that and I'll just weight it over the back of the loom to give it a little bit more tension. So that's another thing that you want for tapestry weaving, is to have a good amount of tension. However, with the rigid heddle loom, make sure that you don't have so much tension that you can't get the heddle into the up position. That means you have too much. It's going to stress the loom, it's going to stress your warp, and it's not the best situation. This may be a long video, but I want it to be kind of like my last chatty video, but this time we're actually weaving, where we just have lots of time and we're not hurrying anything. A lot of us are home at the moment. A lot of us are looking to distract our minds from things that are going on, and we just want to sort of immerse ourselves in this and take plenty of time. So I hope you don't mind if it's a long video. I haven't had anyone say that my videos are too long. It's usually the opposite. People appreciate that I take a bit of extra time to explain things and show things in real time. So that's one of my aims for this video as well. And I hope that you can stay with me for the whole video, which will probably be broken into sections. I'm thinking I might introduce some blue. I want the black to contrast, but I don't want it to totally dominate the whole thing. So after this actual band of black here, I'm thinking that I'll probably use it a little more sparingly, maybe just one pick here and there. I like the idea of using it to sort of outline wavy sections, but not to, as I said, not to dominate. So let's see, the blue. I think I'll bring in this blue, which is, it's quite dark, but it's hand dyed and it's got some lighter bits in it as well. So I'm going to see how I go with that. So I'm going to just cut my black off for now, leave a little tail and just weave that in a couple of warp threads. And then I'll bring in my blue. This is a worsted weight wool, in case you're wondering. I'm going to leave that tail hanging for a minute. We'll fix it. We'll fix it in the next shed. And this one's quite a bit thicker than the fingering weight, so it's going to look a little different. I'm going to tuck that tail in now, 2 warp threads deep. Trying to keep my edges neat there. So I want to do a few rows of this one, and then I'm thinking that I'm going to incorporate another blue from the other side and keep this going on one side. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Just going to push those curves up again from the bottom. Couple more perhaps. Oops, wrong shed. Pop it down again. So it's good to be able to use a variegated yarn, a hand-dyed one or a commercial one, because it gives you these subtleties of colour going throughout and you don't have to put them in. I think this is the last pick that I'll do just of this colour. Push my curves up again. All right, now I need to choose another blue that I think I'll bring in from this side. So I'll try this blue. Now what shade are we in? Up or down? Down shade. Okay, so I'm going to pop this one in, and I think I'll bring it to about here, a little bit further than the middle, and just leave it sitting. And then I'll bring the dark blue in, and I'm going to bring that to the front, just where the other blue ends, so that they're not crossing over each other. So fix up your edges, bubble your weft, and then we can beat. And then in the next shed, which is an up shed, I'm going to tuck that tail in for that one. And then I'm going to go back into the warp with my 2 yarns that I met in the middle. Bubble them. This one as well. Going back in. And I make that warp, that weft thread wrap around the warp that it's going around, and I fix it up so that there's not some giant lump there, and then treat it as usual. Yep, I like those 2 colours together. I'm going to try and push that one down a little bit more to get more of a curve on it, and the same on this side. Okay, so keep forgetting what shed I'm in. I do get distracted when I'm talking. This time I'm going to bring this nice blue colour not quite as far as I did last time. I'm bringing about 1 warp thread less, and then I can bring over my dark blue. So where the lighter blue ends, that's where I'm going to bring up the dark blue. You see how they meet, but they're not crossing over each other. That's what we want. Back into neutral and beat. I'm going to tighten my tension a little. I feel it's a little bit loose. All right. Now we take those back. So they come into the middle and then they go back again. When I'm fixing up the weft thread around the warp thread, I want to make sure I'm not pulling that, because that's going to make a gap in the work. All I want to do is make sure that it snugs around the warp thread so that it's not loose and making a bump in the middle of the work. And I also want to make sure that all of my warp threads are covered. Otherwise you're going to have some warp threads that are showing floats. So for example, this one, if I go straight back into the shed now, this warp thread here won't be covered. So I'm going to go into the shed just around that warp thread to make sure it's covered. And once again, I'm snugging that in, bubbling and beating. Now I think we're in downshed. Yes, got it right this time. So bringing my lighter blue back in once again, and this time I'm going even less far than I did before. So I'm edging my way back, and that's how I like to make curves and slopes in my tapestry. And so this time the darker blue will come right across to meet that blue again. And so I'll bring it up out of the warp, out of the shed, so that it's meeting but not crossing.